Hello. Today we're going to tell you about a shocking situation that occurred in one of the most ordinary American hospitals. A terrifying truth that no one expected, and which had to be uncovered by an ordinary nurse fighting for her patients' lives. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It's really interesting to see who's joined us. Now, get comfortable. We're starting. In a small hospital located on the outskirts of a bustling American town, Jennifer had built a reputation for herself as a reliable and skilled nurse. She was a seasoned professional who had spent the last 10 years of her life in the medical field, saving hundreds of patients along the way. From minor injuries to life-threatening illnesses, Jennifer had always been the calm in the storm, the one who knew how to stay composed in the most chaotic of moments. Her colleagues trusted her, and the patients felt safe under her care. Jennifer wasn't one to seek recognition or accolades. She didn't need the praise. Her satisfaction came from the knowledge that she had made a difference. Every life she touched, every patient she helped recover, was her reward. She had long accepted that this was her calling, and she carried out her duties with quiet confidence. But that confidence began to waver one chilly morning when Jennifer arrived for her shift and immediately sensed something was off. The hospital was quieter than usual. There were fewer staff members in the hallways, and those who were present didn't meet her gaze. Nurses and doctors alike were rushing about, their faces set in grim lines. Jennifer couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that lingered in the air. Her shift began like any other, but as the hours passed, the tension in the hospital only grew. Colleagues avoided eye contact, whispers filled the corners of the hospital, and everyone seemed to be moving a little faster, as if trying to avoid something. Jennifer, always observant, began to notice subtle changes in the way her colleagues behaved. It wasn't just that they were quieter, it was that they seemed anxious, as if they were hiding something from her. It wasn't long before Jennifer was assigned to a new patient, a young woman named Emily, who had been rushed to the emergency room following a car accident. Emily was in a coma, her body battered and broken. The doctors initially gave her a slim chance of survival, but Jennifer was determined to do everything she could to help her. She had seen patients in worse condition pull through before, and she wasn't about to give up on Emily so easily. As Jennifer went through the initial procedures to stabilize Emily, she noticed something that struck her as odd. A few of the nurses on her team seemed reluctant to follow the usual protocols. They hesitated to administer certain medications and treatments, and when Jennifer suggested additional tests to monitor Emily's progress, they looked at her with strange, almost fearful expressions. "Are you sure we need to do all of that?" one of the nurses asked nervously, glancing at the chart before looking away. The doctor didn't mention it. Jennifer, unfazed by the question, replied calmly, "If we want to give her the best chance, then yes, we need to be thorough." But even as she spoke, she could feel the eyes of her colleagues on her. They seemed to be watching her every move, as though they were waiting for her to make a mistake. Jennifer, used to working under pressure, dismissed the unease. She focused on Emily's care, determined to do her best. Days passed, and Emily's condition remained critical. Jennifer kept a close eye on her, constantly monitoring her vital signs and adjusting her treatment as needed. But there was something unsettling about the atmosphere in the hospital. It wasn't just the patient's critical state. There was a palpable sense of dread hanging over the staff. And then, just 3 days later, Emily died. The cause of death, according to the official report, was complications from the accident. Jennifer, however, felt that there was more to the story. She had seen patients in worse shape survive accidents far more severe than Emily's, and yet, despite all the effort she had put into Emily's care, the young woman had died. Jennifer couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong behind the scenes. She immediately began to review Emily's medical records, but what she found only deepened her suspicions. There were discrepancies in the notes, gaps in the treatment timeline, vital signs that had been recorded incorrectly, and medication that had been administered late. Jennifer knew it was not her fault. She had followed every procedure to the letter. But the more she examined the records, the clearer it became that someone had dropped the ball. Jennifer wasn't sure who to talk to. Everyone around her seemed to be avoiding her, as if they were trying to distance themselves from the situation. She tried speaking to Dr. Michael, the head physician, but he was unusually distant. His answers were vague, and his demeanor had changed. He seemed worried, almost as if he knew something Jennifer didn't. "Just focus on the patients, Jennifer," he said one afternoon when she questioned him about Emily's case. "The rest will work itself out." But Jennifer wasn't satisfied with that answer. Something was happening in this hospital. Something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She had to find out what it was, even if it meant going against her colleagues. That night, Jennifer stayed late after her shift and went through the hospital's records, looking for patterns in the recent deaths. She found a disturbing trend. Patients who had been admitted with relatively minor injuries had, for some inexplicable reason, died under mysterious circumstances. Jennifer couldn't ignore the glaring inconsistencies in the medical reports. In each case, there were missing documents, forgotten treatments, and unexplained delays in care. Jennifer's heart raced as she realized the full extent of what she had uncovered. This wasn't just a series of unfortunate mistakes. Something far darker was at play here, and she was about to uncover it, whether anyone liked it or not. But with each new discovery, Jennifer began to sense that she was being watched. Someone was keeping an eye on her. Someone who didn't want her to find the truth. Her instincts told her to be careful, but Jennifer wasn't going to back down. She had made a promise to her patients, to herself, that she would always give everything she had to save lives. And she wasn't about to stop now. The days that followed Emily's death were filled with an overwhelming sense of unease. Jennifer couldn't shake the feeling that something was horribly wrong in the hospital. Despite her growing suspicions, she had little proof. The doctors and nurses had all seemed to avoid her questions about Emily's case, and when she pushed further, she encountered nothing but vague reassurances and excuses. It was as if the staff had all agreed to remain silent. Jennifer's investigation into Emily's death had come to a standstill. The medical records had been carefully altered or erased, leaving her with nothing but shadows. Yet, there was a growing sense of danger that followed her every step. It was as if the hospital itself had become a cage, and Jennifer was slowly being trapped inside. But she couldn't stop. She had seen too much to turn back now. There had to be an explanation, and if no one else was going to find it, then Jennifer would. One evening, after a long and tiring shift, Jennifer went to the break room to grab a cup of coffee. As she entered, she saw two of her colleagues, nurses Laura and Rachel, sitting together at a table, whispering in low tones. Jennifer had always been close to both of them, and they had always shared stories and gossip during their breaks. But tonight, something was different. Their conversation stopped abruptly as soon as Jennifer walked into the room. For a moment, Jennifer considered leaving, but something about the way they had reacted made her hesitate. She decided to confront them, her voice calm but firm. "What were you two talking about?" Jennifer asked, her eyes searching theirs. Laura, the younger of the two, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Rachel, usually the more confident of the two, avoided Jennifer's gaze entirely. Both women seemed to be hiding something. "Oh, nothing," Rachel finally said, forcing a smile. "Just the usual stuff. You know, gossip." Jennifer didn't buy it. "You were talking about Emily, weren't you? About her death?" At the mention of Emily's name, Laura's face went pale, and Rachel quickly stood up, as if to distance herself from the conversation. The tension in the room was palpable. "We don't know anything, Jen," Rachel said quickly. "Nothing more than what the doctors have said." But Jennifer could tell that Rachel wasn't being entirely truthful. The way Laura looked away, the nervous glance she exchanged with Rachel, it was clear that there was something they weren't telling her. "I'm not buying it," Jennifer replied, her tone hardening. "You two know something, and I need to know what it is. This is bigger than just one patient. It's happening again and again, isn't it? Patients dying unexpectedly, and no one is asking why." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Laura spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "You're right. But you're in too deep, Jennifer. You don't understand. There's more at play here than you realize." Jennifer's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Rachel quickly interjected. "You need to stop asking questions. Trust us. It's better for you if you stay out of it." But Jennifer refused to back down. "No, I can't. I've seen the records. Something is going on, and I won't just ignore it. If it's happening to one patient, it could happen to someone else. I need to know the truth." Laura sighed, her shoulders sagging in defeat. "We've all been warned, Jennifer. It's not just about what's happening in this hospital. It's about the people who are involved. You don't know who's pulling the strings." Jennifer didn't fully understand what Laura meant, but the gravity of her words hit her hard. This wasn't just about a few bad decisions. It was something more, something deeply entrenched in the hospital's operations. Before Jennifer could ask any more questions, Rachel stood up abruptly. "I don't want to be a part of this anymore. You're on your own, Jennifer, and I hope you know what you're doing." With that, she walked out of the room, leaving Jennifer and Laura alone. Laura looked at Jennifer with a mixture of pity and fear. "You have to be careful," Trust me, you don't want to go any further. Some things are better left unknown. Jennifer felt the walls closing in on her. Her heart raced as she processed what Laura had said. Someone was controlling everything from behind the scenes, and if she kept digging, she might expose something that could destroy her and everyone else involved. But Jennifer couldn't stop now. She had seen too many signs, too many little pieces that didn't fit together. Someone was hiding the truth, and it was her responsibility to uncover it, no matter what the cost. The next day, Jennifer decided to take a more direct approach. She knew that the hospital's records were being manipulated, and if she wanted to find the truth, she would have to get her hands on the original files. Late that night, she snuck into the hospital's records room, careful not to be seen. The dimly lit room was silent, and Jennifer's footsteps echoed in the hallway as she made her way to the filing cabinets. She knew that this was dangerous. If she got caught, her career, everything she had worked for, could be over. But she was past the point of no return. She needed answers. Jennifer began rifling through the files, looking for any that seemed suspicious. After a few minutes, she found what she was looking for. A series of patient files marked with a red flag. She pulled them out carefully, scanning each one for any signs of tampering. It didn't take long to find the inconsistencies. The same names appeared over and over again. Patients who had been admitted with minor injuries but had died suddenly under mysterious circumstances. The treatments outlined in their files were incomplete, and many of the procedures were either omitted or delayed. Jennifer could feel her stomach churn as she realized the extent of the cover-up. But as she was about to examine a particularly troubling file, she heard footsteps approaching. She quickly stuffed the papers back into the drawer and hid behind a nearby shelf, holding her breath. The door to the records room opened, and Jennifer could just make out the shadow of someone walking by. It was too close. With her heart pounding, Jennifer quietly made her way out of the room and back to her office, her mind racing. She had seen enough to know that this wasn't just a series of mistakes. It was a deliberate effort to cover up something much larger. Someone was using their position of power to manipulate the system, to ensure that certain patients never made it out alive. And Jennifer was getting closer to uncovering the truth, whether they liked it or not. But she knew that the more she uncovered, the more dangerous it would become. Whoever was behind this wasn't going to let her expose them without a fight. Jennifer's heart pounded in her chest as she sat at her desk, the stack of files before her a tangible reminder of just how much she had uncovered. Her hands trembled slightly as she sorted through the documents, patient after patient, each one seemingly tied to the same string of mysterious deaths. The evidence was overwhelming. The gaps in treatment, the inconsistencies in the medical records, the same names cropping up again and again. But it wasn't just the recent cases that disturbed her. It was the long history of neglect and error stretching back for years. These were not simple mistakes made in the chaos of emergency care. This was deliberate. Someone had been systematically overlooking patients, withholding treatments, and altering records to conceal the truth. Jennifer had spent days poring over the files, her mind swimming with the implications of what she had found. The hospital she had devoted her life to, the place where she had saved hundreds of lives, had become a place of death. The realization made her sick to her stomach. She had trusted her colleagues, she had believed in the system, but now, she was beginning to understand that the very foundation of the hospital was built on lies. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on her office door. Jennifer quickly shoved the files into a drawer and sat up straight, trying to look composed. She wasn't sure who it was, but she knew one thing. She wasn't ready to be caught. The door opened, and in walked Dr. Michael, the head physician, and someone Jennifer had once considered a mentor. His presence in the room immediately put her on edge. He had always been a steady, reassuring figure in her life, but now there was something different about him. Something cold, something distant. "Jennifer," Dr. Michael said, his voice smooth but lacking its usual warmth. "I've been meaning to talk to you. We need to have a discussion about your recent behavior." Jennifer stood up from her desk, trying to keep her composure. "What do you mean, Dr. Michael?" "I've noticed that you've been spending a lot of time digging through patient records," he said, his eyes scanning the room. "That's not typical behavior for you. You've always been a diligent nurse, Jennifer, but this—" He paused, searching for the right words. "This is becoming a bit obsessive." Jennifer met his gaze, her eyes narrowing. "I'm just doing my job. I'm following up on some concerns. We've had a lot of patients die recently under strange circumstances. I need to know why." Dr. Michael's expression hardened. He took a step closer to her desk, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "Jennifer, I've seen the records you've been looking at. You're making connections that aren't there. The hospital has nothing to hide. Sometimes patients just don't survive. That's the reality of this job. Jennifer's stomach churned as he spoke. His words were too rehearsed, too calm. She could see the unease in his eyes, the tightness in his jaw. He was hiding something, and Jennifer knew it. "You're lying," she said quietly. "I've seen the files. I know something's wrong here, and I'm going to find out what it is." Dr. Michael's face darkened. "Jennifer," he warned, his tone now sharp. "You need to stop this. It's not worth it. You're walking a dangerous path, and you're putting yourself in harm's way." Jennifer's heart raced. She had heard the same words from Laura and Rachel, but hearing them from Dr. Michael, someone she had trusted for years, made them hit harder. She had always admired him, had always looked up to him as a mentor. But now she saw the truth in his eyes. He was a part of this. He was hiding something, and he was trying to silence her. "You can't stop me," Jennifer said firmly, her voice unwavering. "I won't let this go. I need to know the truth, Dr. Michael. I won't be complicit in this." For a moment, Dr. Michael said nothing. He simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Jennifer standing there, heart pounding, her mind racing. She had crossed a line. She knew that now. The walls were closing in, and there was no turning back. But Jennifer wasn't afraid. She was more determined than ever to find the truth, no matter what it cost her. The following days were filled with tension. Every time Jennifer walked through the hospital, she felt the eyes of her colleagues on her. They were watching her, waiting for her to slip up. The whispers in the halls had grown louder, and she could sense the hostility in the air. Her colleagues had become strangers, their faces unreadable, their actions suspicious. Jennifer had no choice but to continue. She knew that someone was trying to stop her, trying to scare her into giving up. But she had come too far to back down now. She had to find out what was happening behind the closed doors of the hospital. There was too much at stake. One night, Jennifer stayed late once again, determined to find something that would prove her suspicions. As she made her way through the darkened hallways of the hospital, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around, but saw nothing. Her nerves were on edge as she continued toward the records room. She knew that every second she spent in the hospital after hours increased the risk of being caught. But she couldn't stop now. When she reached the records room, Jennifer hesitated for a moment, checking to make sure no one was around. She had been in here enough times to know how to get in and out without being noticed. But tonight felt different. The air seemed thicker, charged with an almost palpable tension. She slipped into the room and quickly went to the drawer she had accessed before. Her hands moved swiftly as she pulled out the files she needed, scanning them for anything that might give her the answers she was looking for. The hospital had covered its tracks well, but Jennifer had learned how to read between the lines. The names, the dates, the records, everything began to line up. The same patients, the same patterns, the same deaths. As she flipped through one file, Jennifer found a note, scribbled hastily in the margins. "Do not ask questions. You will regret it." Her blood ran cold as she read the words. It wasn't just the staff trying to protect the hospital's reputation. It was something much darker. Someone had been warning others to stay silent, and now, it seemed, Jennifer had crossed a line she couldn't come back from. Suddenly, the door creaked open behind her. Jennifer spun around, her heart racing. But it wasn't the hospital administrator or security. It was someone much worse. Dr. Michael stood in the doorway, his face grim. "I told you to stop, Jennifer," he said softly, his voice tinged with something that wasn't quite pity. Jennifer froze, realizing that she had just made the biggest mistake of her career. She was caught. Jennifer stood frozen, her body tense, as Dr. Michael stepped further into the room. The dim overhead lights cast harsh shadows on his face, and his presence seemed to fill the room with a weight she could no longer ignore. His eyes, once warm and comforting, now bore down on her with a coldness that made her shiver. She could feel the blood draining from her face as the gravity of her situation sank in. "You've gone too far," Dr. Michael said, his voice calm but with an edge of something darker, something dangerous. "I warned you, but you wouldn't listen." Jennifer opened her mouth to speak, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. There was no defense, she knew it. The files she had been digging through, the whispers she had overheard, everything had led to this moment. She had uncovered a truth that someone didn't want her to know, and now she was facing the consequences. "Michael, you don't have to do this," she said, her voice trembling with both fear and defiance. "I'm just trying to find out what happened. Why is everyone covering this up? People are dying because of what's happening here. Michael's eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was quickly replaced by a hardness that Jennifer had never seen before. He took another step toward her, his expression hardening with each movement. "You still don't understand, do you?" he said quietly. "This isn't just about saving a few patients or following the rules. This goes much deeper than that. The hospital isn't just a place for healing. It's a business, and some things are better left unsaid. We have our clients, we have our board members, and we have our investors. They don't care about 1 or 2 dead patients. They care about keeping the money flowing, and that means making tough decisions." Jennifer's breath caught in her throat as the truth hit her with full force. She had suspected that something more was at play, but hearing it from Dr. Michael, hearing him speak with such detached certainty, made her stomach churn. This wasn't just medical negligence. It was a calculated conspiracy. Lives were being sacrificed for the sake of profits, and Jennifer had stumbled too far into the heart of it. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, that's not possible. People can't be treated like that." Michael gave a dry laugh, the sound echoing unnervingly in the otherwise silent room. "You really think that the world works in black and white, Jennifer? You think that doctors and nurses are saints? That we're all just here to save lives? You think that your noble ideals matter in a world where money speaks louder than compassion? We do what we have to do to survive, and now you've put yourself in a position where you might not get out." Jennifer's heart was pounding in her chest, and her mind was racing. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man she had trusted, the one who had mentored her for so many years, was telling her that this entire system, the one she had devoted her life to, was built on lies, manipulation, and greed. And the worst part? She had no way of stopping it. She had no way of exposing the truth without destroying herself in the process. "I won't stop," Jennifer said, the words coming out in a firm, resolute tone. "I won't let you or anyone else keep this hidden. You can't just sweep it under the rug and pretend it never happened." Dr. Michael's eyes narrowed. For a brief moment, there was something like regret flickering behind them, but it was quickly extinguished. "I hoped you would understand, Jennifer," he said, his voice softer now, almost sympathetic. "But you're not ready for the truth. You're too idealistic, too naive. People like you, the ones who want to fix everything, who want to do the right thing, they always get hurt. It's the price you pay for not knowing your place." Jennifer took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. "You're wrong. You don't get to decide what I do. You don't get to decide how this ends." Without another word, she turned and bolted for the door. Dr. Michael moved quickly to block her way, his hand shooting out to grab her arm. The force of his grip was startling, and Jennifer gasped, her heart racing as she tried to pull away. "Let go of me!" she shouted, panic rising in her chest. She could feel the walls closing in around her, could feel the weight of the situation bearing down on her. Dr. Michael didn't let go, his expression hardening. "You've made a mistake, Jennifer. A big one. And now you're going to have to live with the consequences." Before Jennifer could react, there was a sharp noise. Footsteps approaching from down the hallway. Someone else was coming. Someone who had probably been waiting for this moment. Michael seemed to notice it too, his eyes flicking toward the door with a look of resignation. With a final glance at Jennifer, he released her arm. "This isn't over," he said, his voice cold and final. "You're playing a dangerous game, and you're going to lose." Jennifer's breath came in quick, ragged gasps as she staggered backward, trying to steady herself. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if she could even trust her own instincts anymore. But she knew one thing. She wasn't going to give up. Not now, not ever. As the footsteps grew louder, Jennifer turned and ran, her pulse pounding in her ears. She could hear Dr. Michael calling after her, but she didn't stop. She couldn't afford to. Not when she was so close to uncovering the truth. She raced down the darkened hallways, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. She didn't look back, didn't pause to see if anyone was following her. All she could think about was the files she had uncovered, the secrets hidden in plain sight, and the price she might have to pay for bringing them to light. But Jennifer knew that she couldn't stop now. She had to finish what she had started, no matter how dangerous it became. Because in the end, the truth had to come out. It was the only thing that mattered. And if she had to tear down everything in her path to expose it, then that was exactly what she would do. Jennifer's feet pounded against the hospital's cold floors as she ran down the corridors, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. The hallway stretched before her, long and empty, like the rest of her life seemed to have become. She had no clear plan, no strategy. Her mind was in turmoil, racing with the weight of what had just happened and the gravity of the choices she had made. Dr. Michael's words echoed in her mind like a warning, but she refused to let them control her. She couldn't stop. Not now. Not when she was so close to the truth. Her hands shook as she rounded another corner, her mind focused on one thing: the files. The information she had uncovered in the records room. It had to be out there somewhere, waiting to be found. She couldn't afford to let it slip through her fingers. If the hospital's leaders could bury the truth, then she would be the one to expose it, no matter the cost. She slowed down briefly as she neared the stairwell, her eyes scanning the hallways for any sign of pursuit. The footsteps she had heard earlier hadn't followed her, but she knew it wouldn't be long before the hospital's security or someone from the administration would be on her tail. The last thing she needed now was to be caught, to be dragged back into that web of lies she was desperate to escape. Jennifer took a deep breath and descended the stairs, her heart racing, her thoughts scattered. She wasn't even sure where she was going anymore. All she knew was that she needed to get out of the hospital. The walls had become suffocating, and she needed air, freedom, even if it was just for a moment. The hospital was eerily quiet at this hour, save for the distant hum of machinery and the occasional shuffle of a nurse's shoes against the tile floor. Jennifer moved quickly through the building, her eyes darting nervously as she passed the nurse's station, knowing that at any moment, someone could turn the corner and find her. But no one did. She felt like a ghost in her own workplace. She made her way toward the emergency exit, her mind filled with the same thoughts that had consumed her for days now. She had thought she was doing the right thing. She had believed that the system she worked in was a place for healing, for saving lives. But now, it had all unraveled before her eyes. Dr. Michael, the people she had trusted, the very institution she had spent years working for. It was all built on a foundation of deception and greed, and she was the only one who seemed to care. Jennifer reached the emergency exit and pushed open the door, the cold night air greeting her with a rush of relief. She stepped out into the parking lot, her heart still racing, but now with a sense of clarity. She wasn't safe, not by any means, but she was free, for the moment at least. But as she stood there, trying to catch her breath and gather her thoughts, a voice broke through the silence, cold and familiar. "You really thought you could just walk away, didn't you?" Jennifer froze. Turning slowly, she saw Dr. Michael standing by the door to the hospital, his silhouette barely visible against the dim light from inside. His expression was hard, his eyes dark, but there was something else in his gaze, something like anger, or maybe disappointment, the same look he had given her earlier, before he'd tried to warn her away from the truth. "How did you—" Jennifer began, but the words trailed off as the full weight of the situation hit her. She had thought she had escaped. She had thought that if she could just get outside, she would be free. But she had underestimated him. She had underestimated the lengths to which he, and everyone else involved, was willing to go to protect their secrets. Dr. Michael took a step closer, his voice low and threatening. "You think you're the first to try something like this? You think that you're some kind of hero fighting for justice? You have no idea what you're dealing with, Jennifer. You have no idea what you've walked into." Jennifer's pulse quickened as she backed up, taking another step away from him. "You're not going to get away with this. People are dying. I've seen the records. You can't cover it up forever." Dr. Michael laughed darkly, a sound that sent a chill down Jennifer's spine. "You really think you're the one who's going to stop this? You have no idea how deep this goes. It's not just the hospital. It's bigger than that. You're in over your head, Jennifer. You've made enemies you can't even begin to understand." Jennifer's breath hitched as the truth began to sink in. This wasn't just about the hospital. It was about something much bigger, something more dangerous than she could have imagined, and she had no idea how to stop it. "You're just a small part of a much bigger picture, Doctor," Michael continued, his voice gaining strength. "And now that you've seen too much, you're a liability. You'll learn that the hard way." Jennifer's mind raced. She had to get away. She had to escape before it was too late. But her legs felt like lead, and her thoughts were clouded with fear. She couldn't outrun him. Not with what she knew now. Not with the knowledge that she had uncovered the truth and had no way of sharing it with anyone who would believe her. "I won't stop," Jennifer said again, her voice shaking but resolute. "You can't scare me into silence." Dr. Michael stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he sized her up. "We'll see about that. You'll realize soon enough that no one can fight against something like this. It's too powerful, too dangerous." Jennifer didn't respond. She couldn't. The words were lost in the whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her head. She knew she was in too deep now. She had crossed a line from which there was no return, and the people who ran the hospital were going to make sure she paid the price, with one last defiant look at Dr. Michael. Jennifer turned and bolted toward the street. She didn't know where she was going, or how she would make it through the night, but she couldn't stay here. Not with him, or anyone else, from the hospital coming after her. Not when she was up against a system that had shown it would go to any lengths to protect itself. As Jennifer sprinted away from the hospital, the reality of her situation began to sink in. She wasn't just fighting for her career, for her reputation. She was fighting for her life, and she wasn't sure how long she could outrun the truth. Jennifer didn't stop running. She couldn't. Her mind raced with thoughts of everything she had just learned, the tangled web of lies and deceit she had uncovered, and the deadly consequences of exposing it all. The cool night air burned in her lungs as she sprinted through the quiet streets, her feet slapping against the pavement with urgency. The hospital, now a place of betrayal and fear, was behind her, but she knew she couldn't outrun the danger. The truth was a heavy burden to carry, and she was carrying it alone. As she reached a more populated area, the city lights began to blur, and her exhaustion started to set in. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and her legs felt like they might give out beneath her. But Jennifer couldn't stop. Not until she had a plan. Not until she had a way to ensure that the secrets she had uncovered wouldn't die with her. She ducked into an alleyway, leaning against a brick wall to catch her breath. Her mind was spinning with the conversation she had had with Dr. Michael. The man who had once been a mentor, a trusted ally in the world of medicine, had turned out to be part of a larger, more sinister operation. She had been naive to think that her investigation was just about uncovering simple medical errors. It was so much worse. The hospital, the people in charge, the people she had worked with, they were all involved in a scheme that profited from the deaths of patients. It was a pharmaceutical racket, a twisted scheme to artificially inflate treatment costs and insurance payouts. The hospital's investors were not concerned with healing. They were concerned with maximizing profits, even if it meant letting people die to further their financial gain. Jennifer's chest tightened as she processed it again. People had died because the system had prioritized money over lives. She couldn't let it continue. She couldn't let the truth be buried, not when so many lives were at stake. She wiped the sweat from her brow, her hands trembling, but then, a thought struck her. A chilling realization. She had no proof. The files she had found in the hospital, the records of tampered treatments and deaths, were now locked in a drawer in the records room. She was the only one who knew what had truly happened, and Dr. Michael and the hospital administration would stop at nothing to keep it all quiet. She had to get the evidence out. But how? Her phone, which she had almost forgotten about, buzzed in her pocket, dragging her from her thoughts. She hesitated for a moment before pulling it out, her hands still shaky from the adrenaline. It was a text message from an unknown number. "You have no idea what you've started. Stop now, or you will regret it." The message was simple, threatening. Jennifer's blood ran cold. She knew it was from someone in the hospital, someone who wanted to silence her before she could expose the truth. The fear began to creep in, but she forced it down. She couldn't let fear control her. Not now. Jennifer quickly dialed the number for her close friend and fellow nurse, Rachel. Rachel was one of the few people who still seemed to care about her, and Jennifer needed her help more than ever. As the phone rang, Jennifer's mind raced with the possible outcomes of this conversation. Could she trust Rachel? Had Rachel been involved in the conspiracy? She had warned Jennifer about asking too many questions, but had she done so out of fear, or because she knew more than she had let on? "Hello?" Rachel's voice came through the phone, shaky and uncertain. "Rachel," Jennifer said, her voice trembling with both fear and resolve. "I need your help. I've uncovered something. Something terrible. The hospital. It's not what we thought. It's all a lie, Rachel. They've been killing patients, and I need to get the evidence out of there before they destroy it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Jennifer could hear Rachel's breath quicken. "What? Are you sure?" I don't know if we can do this, Jen. The people you're going up against, they have power. They have resources. They'll come after you." "I know," Jennifer said, the words coming out with a sense of finality. "I know what I'm up against. But I can't let this go on. I have to do something. Please, Rachel, I need you to help me get the files. I know where they are." Another long silence. Jennifer held her breath, praying that Rachel would understand, that she wouldn't back out. "Okay," Rachel finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll help, but you have to be careful, Jen. You don't know who you can trust anymore. This could ruin everything. I'm already ruined, Rachel. I'm already in too deep. But I'm not going down without a fight. There was a sense of resignation in Rachel's voice when she responded. I'll meet you in an hour. Just be careful. You can't trust anyone at the hospital anymore. Not even the people who pretend to be on your side. The line went dead, and Jennifer stood still in the alley, the weight of her decision settling heavily on her chest. She had made the right call, she knew that. But there was still so much to do. She couldn't let Rachel's warning slip away, though. She couldn't trust anyone completely, not when the stakes were this high. She pulled herself together, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She had no time to lose. The clock was ticking, and she needed to act fast. The evidence had to be retrieved before anyone realized it was missing. If the hospital administrators got their hands on the files, Jennifer's life would be over. Her phone buzzed again, and she froze. Another message. She opened it. Don't think you're going to get away with this. You're already marked. Run, and you won't survive. The text was chilling, and Jennifer could almost hear the venom in the words. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her, but she pushed it aside. This was no longer about just the patients. It was about survival. Jennifer turned and began walking toward the meeting point, her mind focused on the task at hand. She had to get the evidence, get it to the right people, and expose the truth. But she knew that no matter what happened next, things would never be the same again.